Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Games New and Old. I am David Rodriguez, and this is another episode of the Mic Drop. This time, my guest is game designer Andrew Prowse. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing brilliantly, thank you. It's lovely to be on the show.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. You're all the way over in England, quite a distance, and luckily we managed to work out the scheduling. I'm always a little worried about that when someone is quite so far away, but we did that. And I'm excited to talk to you because I've gotten to play one of your games that is going to be coming to crowdfunding somewhere down the road.
Yes.
But we're actually going to talk about one that is coming out. It might actually be out when this goes live. I'm not sure. It depends on how fast I can edit. But we're going to be talking about Skal, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But before we get into that, tell me about your gaming journey. Like, how'd you get into the hobby first off?
Right. Well, when I was little, we basically used to have board games around the house. So things like Scrabble, Ghost Castle, all the kind of the Milton Bradley type younger games. We had things like the Vampire game. This was kind of just brilliant, coming around to people's houses playing games, but it all changed on Christmas Day, 1988, when I came downstairs and found Hero Quest.
Oh, Hero
And at
Quest.
that point, everything just became something different. And so this was the first time where basically you could design your own adventure, you could make it yourself. There was the Irish the Games Master there, and it was the first proper gaming game that I had, and that just became like the whole step forward into everything. And then we had Warhammer Quest, we had things like Space Crusade, all the Games Workshop products.
Oh yeah.
Fast forward, loved this for many years. Fast forward to college, when I met some brilliant people down in college in university in London, and we got into Dungeons and Dragons. This, of course, it was another massive step forward in gaming. I then basically graduated college, came back with a master's degree, and then started a job in an engineering company where I had lots of time to sit and think. So what I started doing was designing games in my head. So over the first 2 months there, I designed 12 games.
Wow.
And then it became a thing where whenever my friends came up from London, every year it became, and I'm going to show you the latest game I've designed. This went on for many years, and it was great. But they kept telling me, look, rather than making so many games, pick one or two that are good and do something with them.
Right.
So after a little while, I kind of narrowed it down to my top 3 or 4, which were a little small Victorian card game called Top Hats and Treachery, which I knew and loved, and a massive, gigantic game called Seishin, which still remains to be published, which is a command and conquer, take over the whole of Japan with samurai and ninjas and all the rest of it. These were my top 2. So I went down to the UK Games Expo, got a beginner's stall. It was all absolutely amazing, hundreds of thousands of people wandering around. And I basically said, look, shall I make this gigantic, massive game or this little teeny tiny card game? And everyone was like, the card game, please. So went away, designed that, took it to Kickstarter, and fast forward to the end of that process, had a little game that basically got shipped all around the world. We've pretty much sold out completely now. We've sold about 1,000 copies, and it was just a little fun game. And then that had taken me about 7 years to get to that point. And I was like, oh, right, this is good. What now? But while I was basically making and designing and talking to people over Top Hats, I was playing a load more games. So I got used to all the proper mechanics like worker placement, resource management, all the things that gamers take for granted. They know how all these mechanics are, but I was kind of learning it for the first time. And I thought, right, for my next proper game, I'll make a game which has got all these in. I also loved the idea of making a game for my wife. And she is not more the Ameritrash story-driven side. She's more like the strategy and the management and resources.
Okay.
And so I made, which Merchants of Infinity, which is a brilliant, fantastic space game, loads of worker placement, resource management. Tried to take that to Kickstarter in 2020. And you can guess the end of that story.
Such a bummer.
Yeah, the world basically said, no, we have other things to worry about. And I was kind of plunged into oh my goodness, this has all gone wrong. So, but my brain's always super creative. So while it was ticking over, what do we do next? What do we do next? What do we do next? I had the idea of Viking games, and I love Vikings. I've taught Vikings in school for my day job as a teacher. So I came to a little fun Viking game that everybody could play, and that became Skal.
Right on. That makes sense. So you talked about creating your own quests when you were playing Hero Quest, and you played Dungeons and Dragons as well. Do you think that that kind of experience helped you learning to design games, just thinking up the quests and whatnot, or even just your characters or what have you in D&D?
Oh, definitely. I mean, in terms of the very first time I was playing Hero Quest, you know that in the middle of the Hero quest book there is the blank quest map, which you can then
Right.
photocopy and write your own ones. So the very first time I did this, I basically made this ridiculously complicated one with like loads of extra details, and I was pulling in other miniatures from other games that I had to add to it.
That's
Um,
awesome.
when I was doing the D&D in college, I was always the games master,
Okay.
which is kind of the position I always fall into. And I would have so much fun designing and spending ages planning out all these adventures for people. And I still love running RPGs now. I've got loads of different systems that I occasionally run. I even made one of my own in college as well.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, basically, I said that was my thesis. I ended up with it like properly like leather bound and everything, and it was just gorgeous. So that kind of put me on the path to I want to make this, I want to make that. It was this like fountain of creativity that never seems to go away, and that was what got me into designing games.
That's really awesome. So, like, when you're designing a game, are you more of like the theme first or mechanics first kind of person? How does that go for you?
Well, normally I go with the theme first. Apart from merchants was
Oh,
I wanted to build a game around the mechanics that my wife loved. So that was basically much more strategy and style first. With the other games I've done, it's been always theme driven. So this one was definitely a Viking game. The other one was basically a Victorian game. And then it became like, what type of Victorian game do I want? What type of Viking game do I want? So I love stories and I love being driven by stories. So I think for most games I make, that's where the idea comes from. When I was designing the Japanese game, I've always loved the feudal era of Japan and samurais and
mm,
ninjas and that kind of thing. So there's this huge well of I love this theme, I love this era. How can I make a game that kind of does it justice?
that makes sense. All right, so are you a history teacher then?
I'm a primary school teacher, so a bit of
Oh,
everything,
okay.
really.
So you do everything. Okay, well that includes history teacher, I think. So
Yeah, exactly.
that,
I love teaching history topics. That's one of my favorite things. And the fun thing is, whenever I've got a class in school and we're doing a new topic, I normally start by basically, and this is a bit revolutionary, but let's imagine we're doing Romans or something. The
okay.
first thing I do on week one is I get them to D&D style design their own Roman character, which they
Oh,
then
that's
carry
great.
through the rest of the term. And then whenever we do like a story like you got to escape Pompeii, it's always their character escaping Pompeii. And the way we always finish every term is I design them an escape room to do in school.
Wow.
So
That's
that's how I
really
teach.
I wish that you had been the one to teach me any part of any history because
Yeah.
I think history is very, very interesting, and I think almost none of my history classes were very, very interesting. It was always like, "Oh, remember these dates and remember,"
Yeah. Turn
that's
to page
cool.
394.
Yeah, I just man, I just can't get there, but the way you teach, I think that sounds really fantastic. So you actually bring some gaming and game design into your classroom then, right?
Totally. All the time. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Do you do it with other subjects as well?
Well, yeah. Again, one thing we basically do is I say as kind of like a weekly, like with the end of the at the end of the week, if they do, well, we've got a little bit of time on the Friday, so I normally put in like extra challenges. So again, with their character, wherever they're up from the topic, I give them like dice to roll and dice challenges to do, and depending on how they do, their character gets to progress, like level up, basically. So much
Wow.
fun.
That sounds like a blast. Man, where were you when I was in primary school? You were probably not
Oh,
born yet. I don't know, but oh, wow, that sounds great. Well, that's really cool. So, so you have this a new game on Kickstarter, Skull, and I have to tell you that, for me, even when I had just seen the picture of this, but I knew you designed it, this was, this is gonna be an Instaback unless it was something where I just knew I could not get to the table, which is not the case.
yeah.
Because, I got to try your game Merchants of Infinity, and I don't wanna do, any specific spoilers, but my wife and I just filmed our top 50 games of all time, and it
Ooh.
made it into both of our lists. So
Yay!
and we were both like, "Well, no one can get this right now today. Should we put this on here?" But we both decided, yeah, because it was just that good. So,
Brilliant.
so that
Thank you.
kind of convinced me, like, okay, whatever he does, again,
Yeah.
unless it's just impossible for me to play for whatever reason,
Well,
it's got to get played.
the two plans I've got basically are if Skal does really, really well, that kind of opens up the
Yeah.
opportunity to do merchants at Kickstarter. The other option I've got, because I was speaking to somebody called Andrew at the Hairy Game Lords podcast, he's basically said what you could consider doing is find a happy company who'll be prepared to take on your game and publish it themselves. And
Right.
I think I'd be happy to consider that to get it out there because people want to play it. The only
Right.
proviso I've got is if they do that, I want it to stay the game it is. I don't want them to like completely take it to bits and rebuild it. I want it to be
Right.
Merchants of Infinity. But then people
Yeah.
get to play it. So that's the idea. I mean, I've not given up on it. I made it for my wife. It's a fun game. You know it's a fun game. So
Mhm.
people deserve to have this in their lives.
Yeah, I know. I personally will be super sad if that does
Yeah.
not get to be somewhere where I can actually get a copy of it because it's really amazing. So,
Yeah.
but I don't want to get too far ahead of things. We got to talk about
Okay.
the new game,
Yes.
Skal. So why don't you tell me what this is all about?
Right. So I want you to imagine this. I mean, I'm not sure where you can see it on the camera, but I'm sure you've got art to show. This is the beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful game Skal. Now, Skal basically means cheers in Norwegian, which is the language of the Vikings. So basically, what happens is you are a Viking god or goddess. You are feasting and drinking in the mead hall of Valhalla, basically where the grateful, glorious dead go to feast for all eternity. So you get to take on either the role of a Viking god or goddess. So you could be, for example, Odin, or you could be Loki or Thor or Frey. You get the idea. With that, you have some dice on your mat. The idea is the game is a dice stacking drinking game, which is basically great for a filler game, great for a little fun starter game. You each have a little metal steel shot glass. You have a handful of dice. Now, in the prototype version, these are all beautiful gem spot dice. However, in the Kickstarter version, these will be rune dice. So if you can see that reasonably well, each of the dice will basically have the different symbols of the Viking gods and goddesses on the different faces of the dice, which basically will mean it's basically every copy of the game will therefore come with 40 custom Viking dice you're not going to find anywhere else ever. So that's quite a draw, really.
Yeah.
There's also the option which I found investigated. Instead of basically cardstock mats, we're looking at turning these into neoprene versions instead for like extra perfect quality. So the idea is basically each turn, everybody's got their dice. There's also a stack of like black dice, shared dice in the middle of the table that everyone can grab. So every turn, you take a card from the pack of cards and you draw it and reveal it to all the players. That's going to show a pattern of dice. So all the players basically grab their dice and start piling them up on their mat to make that shape. You start with 4 dice, and obviously then it's going to be kind of a bit of a scramble to get the shared dice in the middle and stack up the dice you need. Whoever does this first basically raises their cup and calls out, Skal! And then they win the card. If you win enough cards, you win the game. It's that simple. And you don't have to play this as a drinking game. You could just play it as a family fun game. No alcohol needs to be involved at all. If you're consenting adults and want to put something in the cups, well, that's up to you. So that's the way the game plays. And there's different challenges you can put in. So there's different types of cards depending upon like extra challenges that you want. So you might need to have all the certain faces of runes facing outwards a card. You basically have a mixture of different dice and putting in different places. They might be balanced up in a particularly tricky way that they could fall over.
Oh, God.
You might even need to close your eyes and stack them blind.
Oh, geez.
And then there's also extra challenges you can throw in. So in the Viking legends, the god Odin had to give up an eye. He's often shown with one eye to like the wise god of Mimir. So you can call a challenge of Mimir. So everybody's got to close one eye.
Oh, God.
There's also the legend of Tyr, who lost a hand. So if you call the challenge of Tyr, everyone's got to put a hand behind their back and only use one hand. So for a dexterity game, it can get pretty wild.
That sounds awesome. I got to say, I'm glad that alcohol isn't necessary, not because I mind drinking, but because I am a super lightweight. And by the time I played like 3 rounds of this, I would be probably falling over. It's embarrassing, honestly.
Yeah,
it
well,
really is.
as I said, like 95% of the games I've practiced with this have basically been just like alcohol free. We have tried a few with basically like ale and spirits and the rest of it, and it gets very silly. But it plays perfectly well as a family friendly game.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really have in the last few years really grown to appreciate that kind of game because it either like you said, it gets you kind of started and in the mood to like get playing stuff, or even at the end of the night, it's nice because maybe don't want to think so hard anymore. You don't want to bust out some crazy Euro, but
Yeah.
and you know, if you're a little tired, actually, I think that game would even be a little more challenging. But
Yeah. I mean, this is
so,
where. So let me just grab Top Hats from the shelf.
yeah,
This is
go for
where
it.
I originally made my first game, Top Hats. I said basically like this is a brilliant little filler game. You can play it
Mhm.
when you. It's like you can play this to get everybody warmed up and chatting and relaxing and talking. Or for example, like if you've got a game night and some people haven't arrived yet, and you've got 10, 15 minutes, have a quick game of this, or have a quick game of this while you're waiting for everyone else to arrive.
Right.
So, or if you've got like this mega game that's going to take up the whole of your evening, have a game of that while you're setting up the big game. It
Right.
fits in perfectly.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'm assuming it can't have a very big footprint with you just have your
Oh no,
individual
it's very
boards and then
little.
dice in the middle.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's fantastic too. Um, so how many people does it play?
6. Of course, you
6.
can buy more
Okay.
copies. Yeah, there's 6
Well,
different
yeah,
ones you
that's a
can
good
build the
point.
6. So.
Okay, right on. So if you buy more copies, I assume, you know, do the what am I trying to say here? So do the different gods or they're just basically like there's no
No, they have
difference
different
between them,
powers
right?
as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically, for example, like if it's obviously the turn for drawing the card goes round around the table. So if it's your turn to draw the card, your character has a special power. For example,
Okay.
Odin, obviously foresight, he can like look at the top 2 cards and choose which card you play.
Okay.
Loki can turn all his dice that the way it shows his rune, because some of the cards you need a special rune facing upwards, so he can get an advantage on that. Thor can basically do the, you know, the arm behind your back one. He can make
Right.
everyone else do it while he hangs on to his drink. There's Freya, who basically can start with extra dice in there. So they've all got their own special powers. The other thing is I've said is that basically looking at, I mean, if the game does amazingly well at Kickstarter, there are stretch goals. For example, I didn't design 6 gods and goddesses. I designed 12. So if we go
Okay.
super well, these are going to be double-sided, and there's going to be extra gods and goddesses with extra powers. So
That's
there's
cool.
loads. There's always loads more.
I always love when a game has just like more variety without adding like ridiculous complexity to it. So
Yeah.
more character cards is awesome. So
Well, that's the
people,
thing.
you
You
gotta
can play
make
this
it hit
game
those
as
stretch goals.
simple as you like or as deep as you
Right.
like.
That's cool. So, so I think you mentioned that because you were talking about the different challenges. So usually, if I'm building my stack, they don't have to be facing the same way as in the cards unless I have that
Yeah.
particular challenge, right?
Yeah, the way that I've basically made the dice, if you can see that reasonably well, they've all kind of got like the same symbol on it, their helm of
Mhm.
all it's in there, which means that
Okay.
dice can be whatever way you like. It's only if you
Okay.
get a specific card like that one, for example, where if that's Freya's rune, all of Freya's runes would have to be facing outwards to all the other
Okay.
players. And then because each of the people have got like their own particular rune. So Thor is that one. That Thor is us, is Thor. So if you get a card called True Stack, then some of the dice can be whichever you like, but some of the dice, these Rainbow Raven ones, have to be like your own particular rune. So in those cases, the actual face of the dice matters. But in other dice, it can be whatever you like.
Right on. That makes sense. So, you talked about the various playtesting you did and how most of it was alcohol free and whatnot. How rowdy does this game get? Because it seems like it seems like this could be a game where like you're at a game store convention and for the most part everyone's kind of head down and then there's that one table that's like shouting over there. Is this the
Oh yeah,
shouty table?
this is exactly like basically you will hear this table before you see this table because people will be laughing and joking and going Skal, 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 Skal. Yeah, there'll be a really good like high energy around this table. It'll be a fun table to be at.
Yeah. So with this one, like, how'd you come up with this idea? I mean, I know you say you usually do theme first. Were you just thinking like what do Vikings do when they're
Well,
sitting around partying or what?
this was a combination of things. Obviously, I made top hats first and was trying to get top hats into
Right.
shops. So one thing that I got told when I was trying to get it into different shops, a little game. One thing people kept saying is it like Cobra Paw? And I'm like, what's Cobra Paw? Cobra Paw was a wildly, you probably know it. It's a
I
wildly
don't think I
successful
do.
little game that had like an octagonal box and was basically
Okay.
like had 16 dominoes in it. And it was like
Okay.
matching the dominoes. So it was a really easy, really like a stupidly easy game that just kept selling and selling and selling. And I was like, no. And they're like, oh, it's a shame. We've sold 1,000 copies of that this year. And I'm like, damn, I need to make Cobra Paw. So I was thinking like, how can I make a game that will appeal to everybody, will be as simple as possible, and will have the fewest possible rules? So my brain went away and designed a game with 42 dice, 6 players, 6 metal cups, and a pack of cards. But it was quick and silly and fun, and it was great. And the silly thing is that I said I'm a primary school teacher. I just got to a point where I taught Vikings for like 5 years in a row. And I went to the head teacher and I basically said, look, I love Vikings, but if I keep teaching Vikings, I won't still love Vikings. Can I please teach something else? So I taught like Tudors or Victorians or something that year. But in the background, my brain was going, I miss Vikings. I miss Vikings. So when it came to make a simple game plus pick a theme, it had to be Vikings.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Have you played this with kids yet?
Oh yeah, I play this with kids all the time. And so I say in our family we play it, but the biggest success recently is at school. I run like a board game club after school on Thursdays. And I introduced this club to the children I have there, and this time every single week they ask to play this game now.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
I was wondering because I mean, it seems like it'd be great for family. You know, I've got 3 kids. One is too young for any of these games yet, but you know, I've got a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I'm always looking for something that I could play with them that is not mind-numbingly dull for me. So, I mean, that seems like it would be a good one for that.
Yeah,
now, I do have to ask.
I was going to say I've put 8+ on the box, but we've played it with younger than that. Like I've played with people at school who are kind of like 7, 8, and 9, and they do absolutely fine with it.
Right on. That's cool. So I was wondering because you have there's like a communal pool of the black dice in like the middle of the table, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so is this a game that people need to take off their rings for so they don't
sparks?
You know what
flying.
I mean? Like some games, like you can end up whacking each other's hands. Like, is there enough dice for everybody to do it, or does it run out, or like how does that work?
Well, this is the question, because this is one thing that came out in playtesting. Initially, I put enough to have everyone have 9 dice in, and then that made the cost of the game go up. And I figured, well, people are going to want to pay less. How can I get the cost of the game down? So I've got at the moment 42 dice in, which is just enough for all the players to basically have 7 dice. Okay. The difference is that many of the cards need 8 dice.
Oh,
so basically, it's going to be a race to get that last dice as fast as you can. And obviously, if you're passing up the dice and they all fall to bits, you've got to start over again. The other thing is you're only allowed to grab 1 dice from the middle at a time. You can't just grab a handful. So it's going to be as fast as you can. Now, a couple of reviewers said, couldn't you just have like 1 extra dice in there to make it up to 43 dice? And the answer is maybe, but do you want that scrabbling challenge or not? So
yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I was like, well, I assume they have to be uneven, because otherwise why not just start everybody with whatever dice they need? And then I was like, oh boy, there's going to be some like slapping away hands in the middle of the table. And so now be honest now, have there been any hand related injuries that you've seen due to grabbing dice?
No, but occasionally dice have gone flying off the table when people have just gone exuberantly at it. But then we just generally get on with it. It's generally scrabbles whatever dice are left, and it's like, leave that one. We'll get it later. Keep going.
Right. So is the rule that you have to use like your pool of dice first before you grab any?
Yeah. So the idea is, well, initially, when I first designed the game, I basically had everyone had 9 dice around their board, and they just basically grabbed the 9 dice, put it on, and that was it. And it played fine, but there wasn't enough player interaction. And as soon as I switched to you start here. So basically there's like about 8 or 9 seconds of like furious concentration. And then people just start lunging for the middle of the table. And that's when it gets really exciting. So yeah, do your own first and then go for what's left.
Right on. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And like, so how long does a game of this usually take? It seems like it'd be pretty fast, right?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Basically, I've put 10 to 20 minutes on the box. The way that the basic game works is you just keep basically using and reusing the stack cards, which is the basic ones, and it's just first to 5 cards wins, because they're the easiest ones. The dice can be however you like, but obviously with the more challenging ones, they're worth like 2 or even 3 points. So I changed it to, if you're playing the full set of cards, it's like first to 9 points wins, or first to 10 points wins, depending on the number of players. You can adjust it. So,
okay, that makes sense. I was
going to say, there's even a solo mode where you can basically play by yourself and either kind of like have try and get through as many cards as you can in a set limit, or kind of lay them out in a pattern and then get through them as fast as you can. Solo mode's generally non-drinking version.
I mean, for some people, it's not going to be. Let's be honest. There's going to be some people where that's an excuse to, you know, tie one
What I
on.
put in the
So,
rules is please drink responsibly.
right, yeah. So this made me think of something because I was actually thinking about this game last night and how it'd be if I'm sitting around the table doing it, at least as much as I understood it. So are the cards are the cards waterproof themselves, or do you need to sleeve them? Because I'm thinking if you're like lifting up
Yeah.
uh, a cup of whatever you have in there, you might want to watch out for splashing. I mean,
Well,
do we need to sleeve these cards?
what I was going to say is, as it is, the cards are a decent quality as they are. You can obviously
Right.
sleeve them. The very first stretch I've put in of basically to make it like linen finish or like plasticize the cards. The obvious answer basically is whoever finishes first. You don't have to start with anything in the cups. You like whoever wins, you could then like, okay, you've won, right? Now let's pour something in the cup, and then you
That's a good
drink.
way to do it.
So yeah,
Okay.
you don't have to have flying liquids everywhere. It could just be like
That's
whoever
what I was
wins.
worried about. You're like, oh dang.
Well, then the other version of it is that people have talked about different drinking modes. Like, if you prefer the kind of like the dominate the winner game, then whoever wins can either make everybody else drink, or if you want to balance the
Oh,
game, whoever wins has to drink, which kind of levels the
right.
mechanic off. So you can explore it in different ways depending on how you want to play it.
I like that. That's good thing. Yeah, I was just a little worried. I was like, this could be kind of a mess, which is fine as long as you know ahead of time. You can lay out some,
Yeah,
tarps or something so
yeah.
prepared for whatever.
No, play
Um,
first, drink afterwards.
okay, perfect. So if you were playing this as a drinking game, what
Yeah.
is your drink that you would put in there?
What I would do is I would get a bottle of my like favorite ale, and I would basically
Mhm.
put a bit of it in at a time, like basically like a really gorgeous like a porter or a nutty ale, that kind of thing.
Okay,
I love like Belgian beers as well. So basically, you don't need much of a Belgian beer to have a good taste, but rather that
right.
I think we tried it a couple of times with spirits, and it got very silly very fast. So I would
Oh, I
basically
bet.
say
Yeah.
a larger bottle of something low alcohol and have a bit at a time.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing tequila or something like that with this one for sure. That would be, especially for me. Man, some people could do it. I just
Yeah,
can't anymore. It's not good.
yeah.
Okay, so is there
I was going to say I had
go
a
ahead.
brilliant video from the Hairy Game Lords, and they basically went around the table saying their favorite drinks. One person said, "I would put in Ribena. I would put in milk. I would put in pineapple rum." So yeah, you can play it however
Well,
you like.
right on. Yeah. Yeah. At some point, I am sure I will play that as a drinking game. Probably more often than not, I won't because it'll probably be with the kids, and that's not gonna work out. And
Yeah,
they don't need to be.
yeah.
I mean, I would
It's small
I would
enough.
give them
Just
apple juice or
take it down the
something. But
pub.
yeah, that's perfect. That would actually be great. Wow. Have you, okay, so I know you've done like official playtests. Have you ever actually taken this somewhere and like a pub, for instance, and had people like join in that you didn't even know? Because I think that would be
Well,
really possible with this game.
there are plans of doing that this week, in fact. So
Really?
I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, please do. I'm actually really curious because I could see people like kind of seeing like what is going on here and wanting to try it out. Like I could
But
really
that's the thing.
easily imagine that.
Hopefully, it's a game where if you see it played, you'll go, "I want to know more about that. Tell me more. Tell me
Right?
more." Like
Yeah, it
this
seems
is
like
a convention hall. You would hear this and you would come and see what was going on.
right.
So
Absolutely. That's great. So I'm gonna make sure I have a link to the Kickstarter page in my description. But other than that, is there anything else that you want to tell us about the game that maybe we didn't cover, or about the campaign? Anything at all?
what I basically say is that it's a brilliant little game. It'll you will play this again and again and again for the cost of a round of drinks, basically. The other brilliant thing we've talked about the idea of shipping is that I've tried to discount shipping as much as possible. The other really good news is basically the way that shipping is currently working across the world at the moment. Um, Shipping 2 copies is only a tiny bit more than shipping 1 copy. So if you can either basically back it with a friend and get a copy each, the shipping will be like half as much. Or if you can buy a copy for a friend as a present, of course, the shipping is virtually half as much per copy. So that's a really good bit of news right now. The other thing, as I said, is to remind everyone that there will be unique Viking dice in there. It'll be great. And what other game can you get like a massive handful of dice and drinking cups for like a reasonable price? It's just good fun. So please find the campaign. It's down as Skal, the Viking Rune Dice Game. And I'm sure see the link for descriptions. Yeah, please back it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I was going to
I
say
Yeah. Go
we're
ahead.
going live on Tuesday, hopefully at 1 p.m. UK time. But the campaign preview link is up there now. You can find it. You can watch it. Please just tell everyone about it.
Yes, definitely please do. Because look, I have not had the chance to play this one. I'm dying to, but I haven't. But I'm telling you, his other game, Merchants of Infinity, was fantastic enough that like I'm now looking for anything that you back, and it's kind of or that you put up as a campaign or what have you,
Yeah.
as something that like I am definitely going to back if I can at all do it. So this game is I have no doubt fantastic. Just I mean. Some games you look at and you're not sure, right? Because there's so much complexity and crazy stuff. Like, I don't know, is that going to be good or
Yeah.
not? Like this one, I
You
think
can
is pretty
teach this
easy
in
to
a
see.
minute.
Yeah, yeah, it's very easy to see the kind of fun you're going to have with it. So, um, seriously, folks, I just back this game. Back it. I'm going to back it. I may actually get two. I don't usually have big groups, but in the off chance I do, it might be good to have two copies. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. So I have to debate, but
Awesome.
I'm thinking about it. So definitely one copy though for sure. All right. So now that we've talked about that, we are going to go to our debate segment. Okay, so it is time for our big debate. And we are going to be debating whether or not those big, crazy miniature filled games are a good thing or not. And as you might know, if you've watched this before, our arguments could be very serious or they could be utterly ridiculous. Whatever we think is going to win us the vote of the people. I'll ask y'all again to put a note in the comments which of us you think made the better argument. Not if you agree with us. That's a whole different thing. If you think that one of us is more convincing, let me know who so I can be aware of it. So far, I've either won or been tied so far when I'm
Far.
recording this. So we'll see. This could all change today. I don't know, but we have to know because if you don't tell us, neither me or Andrew are going to be able to sleep a wink, and that's bad. He has games to design, and I have games of his to play, so we can't have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose randomly who takes what side. We're then going to choose randomly what order we go in. And once we've done that, in our turn order, we'll give like our opening statement, we'll give our middle statement or rebuttal, and then we'll give our closing statement. We'll just go back and forth. And that's what will happen. And then when we're done, we'll talk about how we actually feel about this particular topic so that we're not misrepresenting ourselves. So through the magic of science, I have this handy dandy randomizer here. And what we're going to do is if it comes up with an odd number, Andrew, you're going to be saying that the big miniatures games are good. If it comes up with an even number, you're going to be saying that they are not so good.
Okay.
So, hold on. Okay, so you're going to be saying that they are not so good.
Not so.
Not so good, or even terrible. Whatever spin you want to put on that.
Let's
All
see.
right. Then we're going to figure out which of us goes first. So, if it does an odd number, Andrew, you will be going first. If it does an even number, I'll be going first. Even number. Okay. All right. So I go first. I'm saying that the big crazy miniature games are good. Okay. All right. Here we go. I've been trying to think about this a lot. Okay. So in recent years, the games that you've seen that have been like super popular that everyone talks about as soon as they pop up are the games with tons and tons of miniatures. It's a huge deal. I mean, you could almost guarantee a game that gets put on Kickstarter or GameFound or even in your store, if it's got hordes of miniatures, people are going to buy it. I mean, looking behind me, I'm not sure which way I'm pointing. I have Ankh. This is all mirrored for me, so it's hard to know which way to go. I have Ankh up here. That's got a lot of miniatures. I've got Marvel United. That's got a ton of miniatures. These things are fantastic. And why? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one, not only are you getting a board game, which is great, you're also getting a hobby. You're getting something you could do when you don't have someone to play with. You can paint those miniatures up and make them look beautiful, or you don't have to. They look great on their own, but you have that option now. Now, additionally, we have to look at the history of games a little bit, right? They've recently found like little, smooth out like round pieces and some, stone boards, for lack of a better term, that have like divots in them that they think were part of an ancient game. We're just talking about a basically flat surface and some like ball-like things, right? And we go from that to like, we get like cards and chess pieces and meeples. And my point is that we are looking at a mirror of humanity. We're looking at evolution. It started off as this little thing, and as time has gone on, it's changed little by little to the point where we now have these incredibly sculpted models that are absolutely beautiful. I mean, the amount of detail they can get on these things is incredible. I don't even know if we could go anywhere from here. I feel like we're at the pinnacle of what games and their components could be. The future, they're going to have to actually like genetically engineer little people to move around. That's the only way. We have reached the absolute top level of what board games could be. And I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't want to embrace the pinnacle of gaming and the future of gaming. Heavy miniature heavy games are the way to go. Every game will eventually have tons of miniatures, and gaming will be better for it. And that's my opening statement.
That was very, very impressive. I'm going to have a hard time dealing with that one. I love the way you've brought in the historical element as well, because that's very close to my heart. So let's take this from the point of view of history. So let's travel back in Kickstarter over, let's say, the last 8 or 9 years. If you had the money to make of yourself a fine enterprise and basically make your game idea come true, you would have the capital to basically put forward, let's say, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 or pounds, and therefore you'd be able to make your dream happen. Kickstarter, then, the premise of a gateway of possibility for somebody who had an idea but nothing more. They didn't have the wealth of a big company or the monetary values to back themselves up. So they were able to come to Kickstarter and say, look, I have a dream. I want to be able to make this happen. If I gather the community together, if I build the community together we can achieve this. And then that was their stepping stone into an industry as a creator. So as we travel forward in Kickstarter history, what we now see is a prevalence towards gaming that's being put forward to by the bigger companies. So, for example, the likes of Zombicide, for example, who have already made themselves a massive household name. What they then do is then they basically release their latest game, stuffed full of pieces, and it makes $3 million. So, as we've seen most recently, as you know, which is very close to my heart, the second that I launched Merchants Infinity, which game relaunched? HeroQuest. So what happens with HeroQuest and similar games, which are, of course, wonderful, wonderful games, is that a gamer will come to Kickstarter. Maybe they've got a little bit of money spare this month. Maybe they've got $80, $90, $100. They then see this glorious game full of miniatures. They place their bid. They back this game for $100. And then this wipes out every small designer hoping to put forward their little game. Because then they get told, I've got no more money left this month. I've just spent £100 or more on a massive miniatures game. I'm sorry, little designer, you don't get your chance. So is that what we want to say is the future of Kickstarter for the gaming industry? That the only people who matter are the established businesses. And that's my opening statement.
Well, that was really good, Andrew. It's hard to disagree with a lot of things that you've said. But listen, I think we all want everyone to be successful as much as possible. I mean, that's great. We want to see everyone prospering and happy. I mean, I do for sure. But what you propose, if I could scale this up a little bit, okay? Let's say I have enough money in my bank account to buy a Lamborghini, right? And I see that I could buy one. There's one available in the color I like and everything. It's great. Now, I could buy that Lamborghini, or I could be like, well, you know what? I think I'll buy this Volkswagen Bug. I mean, look, the Bug's a fine car. It's cute. I like it in a lot of ways, but I mean, let's be honest. If I could buy a Lamborghini, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini. It's just how it is. There'll be plenty of people who could only buy the Bug. I know that because in reality, I cannot buy a Lamborghini. I cannot probably buy a tire for a Lamborghini. I can't. I might have to buy that Bug. But, for the people who have the money to buy the Bug, that's what it's going to be. And the Lamborghini, rather, if the gaming world is full of people who have the money that they want to spend on these miniatures. I mean, that's just how it is right now. I mean, I don't know if everyone is rolling in dough. I didn't think so, but maybe they are. And look, we all want our games to look amazing, right? Like it's almost unacceptable now for people if you get a game that looks like really like prototypey or just like kind of dull on the table, like whatever level of fancy and beautiful you're talking about, the prettier the better, right? And by the way, all your games do look great. I'm not saying they don't. Your games all look fantastic. Let's be clear. I don't want to be coming off as mean here. But part of that is seeing these. I mean, they're basically like little statues on your table that you get to manipulate and move around. I mean, gosh, it's hard to not want those, because if you have any inkling towards models at all, which a lot of gamers do, I mean, they're gorgeous. And right now, you're right. It's rough. Obviously, it's kind of a bummer if you come opposite some really big, heavy miniatures game that's really popular. Like, geez, I can only imagine how incredibly frustrating that might be, because we're in this awkward time now where we're transitioning into this magical world where all games have miniatures. I don't know how miniatures would fit into Skal. I can't imagine, but somehow maybe instead of dice there would be miniatures that you stack. I don't know. You could work that out. You're the designer. You figure that one out. But we're getting there, and we're in a weird in between state right now. I don't think the miniatures games overall are going to squeeze out all the little guys. I mean, there's still people who back all kinds of games that don't even have miniatures at all. There's even people, if you can imagine, that complain about miniatures in games and would say that these games with miniatures are not actually good. They're just shiny and have miniatures. I don't think that's true. I think that there are great designers who don't use miniatures, but there's great designers who do. And you mentioned that those are usually pretty big, big money companies, and that's probably true. But those big money companies can afford to hire some big, good designers. So if you have the money, I'm just saying, I understand completely why you picked the Lamborghini over the Bug. Both good cars, but one's a lot flashier. One you want to show off. One is going to get everyone's attention for sure. Miniatures of the Lamborghinis of the gaming world. I can't help it. It's not my fault. It's what it is. So that's my rebuttal.
Good. Okay. Well, again, there's a lot there that I can't really argue with, because the idea that I do appreciate the artistry and the beauty of a well-crafted miniature, and when you walk across a gaming hall and you see a game that basically has miniatures, you will gravitate towards that game. You will appreciate that beauty and all the hard work from the designer and the artists. I'm not denying that slightest. The weird thing is, I've been in this situation where basically I've been at a games preview company, I've been at a convention, and what does happen is that people will walk straight to the games with the miniatures in. But while they're doing that, they will walk past every other game that doesn't have miniatures in. And for the people who've made a game that I said, like, for example, Skal might not lend itself towards miniatures. You remember the meeples from Merchants of Infinity? Mm-hmm. They were gorgeous. So there are games which don't necessarily need miniatures. And in the same way that from Kickstarter conventions, they basically get almost ignored to the point where the only thing that matters is the miniatures or not. Then that's a very polarized judgment system. The other thing I would say is the Lamborghini argument. Absolutely, yes. If you can afford to put a wonderful performance-driven car into your life, if you want to make that luxury choice, and you can make that luxury choice, then no one would blame you for doing so. However, one thing that I think is a massive strength of the gaming world, the gaming community, is that games are for everybody. The idea that this is a hobby that welcomes everybody from all stretches of life, all kind of like different social groups, different basically backgrounds, different personalities. There is a home for everyone in gaming. So therefore, gaming should be utilitarian. It should be something that everybody is inclusive thereof. And as soon as you start making games that cost vast amounts of money, and you're told that basically the games that have value are the ones that have miniatures in, the ones that don't have miniatures in lack value, all of a sudden you split the gaming community into haves and have-nots. And to a certain extent, that goes against the core belief of what it is to be a gamer, that basically there is a place for you at our table. And I think if you start branding elitism into gaming, where the miniatures, the wonderful, gorgeous, shiny miniatures games are the things that matter most, or even matter more to the extent of all of the games, you risk splitting up that gaming is for everybody platform. And that's my rebuttal.
Very good. You are full of good arguments. I can't really say you aren't, as much as I would like to. I was hoping I could just walk over you on this one, but I can't. You're on top of this. But okay. So imagine this, though. Okay. Imagine a world, because we have to right now, because this is what we're in, where these two kinds of games can maybe coexist a bit, right? Now the games, not 100% true, but the games without miniatures probably going to be less expensive than the games with miniatures, usually, not always. And there's some value in that, especially when you look at various online retailers. And I don't know, I don't know if the same stores we have here carry over to England, but like two of the ones that I go to a lot, this isn't an ad for them, are Game Nerds and Miniature Market, right? And you put this game in your cart that has some miniatures, and it's like $90, right? And that's great. That's what you expect. But now you have to pay for shipping, unless you could spend a little more and get that shipping or get your cost you're spending up over 100. Aha. Here's where they all come in. Now the designer who made the I don't want to call it the smaller game necessarily, but the non-miniatures game, right?
Yeah.
They got this sale because maybe my eye was caught by this big crazy miniatures game, but it gave me the reason to look more closely at this other game that maybe I'd look past at first. Maybe I looked past, it's all the miniatures game, but now it's like, well, I don't need to buy a whole other big crazy miniatures game. I just need something to, bridge that gap between free shipping and not free shipping. Aha, this is perfect for this. I could squeeze that in. Excellent. So they can kind of coexist. They don't have to be these totally separate things, even though I think we will eventually head towards an almost entirely miniatures based hobby here, but it doesn't have to be that way necessarily. I think that even though that initial situation where someone walks past or looks past the non-miniatures games to get to the miniatures heavy ones, that's a real thing. I think it can help the non-miniatures games. For instance, if I'm at a con and I walk past a booth that's selling a game that is not miniatures heavy, and I go to the miniatures game and I buy that game. All right. This is not even about getting free shipping on a shopping cart, right? Like I get it. The game's in my hand. Okay.
Yeah.
I still have to walk back. And someone from these other booths could say, hey, are you really going to be able to play that with everybody? And I'll be like, what do you mean? Right? I can't play Hero Quest or Madara or Descent or whatever with everybody. And they'll be like, no, of course you can't. That's ridiculous. They'll look at that and they'll be intimidated. Come over here and look at our other game. That's perfect. Because now they have an exact reason why I need to buy their game. Because I bought a miniatures game that is not necessarily going to be the easiest for everyone to get into. Now they're telling me the same argument that you gave, that gaming is for everyone. And I need to think about that. I bought my big shiny. That's awesome. But now that big shiny game company has given the other game companies a tool that they can use to get me to buy their game. So my point being,
yeah,
high profits for a miniatures heavy game company with proper marketing can lead to higher profits with the non-miniatures heavy game company. Miniatures are good for everyone. Miniatures are good for the economy. Miniatures will save not just this hobby, but maybe even the world. That is my final statement on the miniatures games.
Well done. Very, very good.
Thank you.
Right. It's a lot to think about there. You've given me a few things to sort of pick up on. So I'm going to take us back to our starting theme of history. The way that you've presented the idea of you could buy the larger miniatures game and then. like the leftover place in the gaming industry, the leftover place in the market condition is therefore filled by the smaller box game. Are you then creating the idea that the smaller box games, the miniatures games are there, and I'm going to go a little bit theatrical here, are there to subsist off the scraps of the table of the miniatures games? Are they to be the leftover players in our community? Therefore, if the elite versions of the miniatures games, the ones who basically your big money ticket is, that's where your heart and soul have gone to, straight for the shiny miniatures, the brand new gorgeous shiny. Not only are you assuming that they would have some leftover money after the game we've already said is very, very greatly expensive, but also then that they would consider spending their leftover money on a little game. So straight away, you're reducing the non-miniatures games people to kind of like begging for scraps off the table of their elite better brothers and sisters. The other thing, therefore, is basically the idea that a lot of people will think, yes, I've got this fantastic game, but as you've said, could you play this amazing miniatures game for everybody? And you've said yourself, no, not always. The Descents, the Hero Quests of this world, the Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars might be a wonderful game that if you've sat down and listened to the rules for half an hour, you know how to play. So therefore, what you've done is you've created yourself a gigantic dinosaur that's basically emptied your wallet, not only left you with a huge amount of miniatures to paint, which most people will not end up painting. They'll end up sat there unpainted forever, giving people grief and woe about their unpainted miniatures. But also then, you've actually spent all your money on a game that you can't play with whoever you like. Whereas pick up a simpler game, a smaller game, maybe even multiple games for the same price as that one big game. And you could have created 5 or 6 different gaming experiences of different genres for your gaming group, rather than one fixed game that only a few people can play. And that's worth thinking about. And that's my closing argument.
Excellent. That was great.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's it. But let us know in the comments who had the more convincing argument. I will even admit that, like, through some of your stuff, I was like, damn, he's good. He's he's on top. He came really ready for this. That's great. Okay. So let's talk about our actual thoughts on this particular issue. If I don't, they may or may not. Well, mine do vary. You can tell me if yours vary from anything you said or not.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, you know that, let's say, my first big game was Hero Quest. And the thing about Hero Quest is it has gorgeous miniatures in. So I can't deny that basically, like, part of my birth into the proper gamer games were Hero Quest, Warhammer's Quest, Space Crusade. All of these had beautiful, gorgeous miniatures in. And that visual difference really pulled me into the hobby from the likes of like the Milton Bradley and the Hasbro games, which just had little tokens or proto meeples, shall we say. So that straight away makes you feel like you're playing something special. So my origins in gaming, yes, of course, I see the massive value. And then when you see a game that has gorgeous miniatures, like is it Blood Rage, the Viking one? Yeah, I love Blood Rage. It's a fantastic game. And then that became all about the other amazing monsters and miniatures you could get. But it was around about that time where I saw the miniatures getting better and better and better that I realized the games were becoming more and more and more expensive. And that almost like pulled me away from those games. Like when I first saw Cthulhu Wars, I was like, this is incredible. And it was like, this is $200. So that from a player's point of view a player and a buyer's point of view started to pull me away from it. Finally, I would say from a designer's point of view, as I said in the first place, my experience on Kickstarter is I will get my butt kicked every single day of the week when I go up against a big miniatures game. So a little struggling person here has a much harder hill to climb than, let's say, a massive company. So I would say that the birth of my being a gamer was all about the miniatures games. And in recent years, I've become more of a cynic, but still a cynic who appreciates the beautiful, beautiful miniatures.
Right. Yeah. You know, I really like, I am not turned off when a game doesn't have miniatures and a game can have miniatures, and I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. But I'm not going to lie and say that I don't get attracted to that. If I see there's some new big game that has a bunch of miniatures on their front page or whatever, I'm like, oh, let me look at that and see what that is. But really, I think beyond that, for me, it's like, as long as a game has like art or something else that just like grabs me, it can work too. Miniatures just happen to be like
Yeah.
I guess maybe an easier grab, I suppose. But like there's a lot of games that you could squeeze miniatures into that it's really not like there's no reason to.
Yeah.
And I don't actually want that to happen. I don't want all games to have miniatures. I think that's an absurd idea,
Yeah.
honestly. So, and you're right about the painting thing. Like I love painting
Mm.
miniatures, but to have the amount of time I would need to paint the miniatures I have is
And then paying for paints and paintbrushes and hours and days and all the rest of it. I mean, the other thing
right.
is when you're designing a game, every miniature that you put in will massively increase the price of the game. Like I think back when I was looking at the Station, the big Japanese game, I still haven't fully made. Like to design one miniature and put one miniature in was going to be something like $2,000 just to design it and put it in. And then if I wanted, let's say, 10 different miniatures types, I'm talking like $30,000 just to make the miniatures before I even try and sell the game. So,
yeah, that's wow. I didn't realize it was quite that much. I guess it makes. I mean, it must take a lot of talent to create the sculpts. I know it's probably digital sculpted mostly now, but either way, that's not an easy thing to do to actually make them look. I couldn't make them look good. I can make it look like a lump of.
You need a master. That's not me, definitely. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I get it. However, there is like I see some people sometimes put out the argument that they see a game with miniatures and they assume then that the game is bad, like the miniatures are there to cover up bad design, and I don't agree with that either. I think that doesn't make sense in that case, because Blood Rage, like you mentioned, is a really great game. It's fantastic. Yeah. So I think that's untrue too. But I guess, gosh, I hope there's not too many people that will only look at miniatures games. I mean, unless doing the painting is something that that's almost as important to them as playing a game.
And they can look gorgeous. They absolutely can. So
yeah, I mean, but that's kind of a different
kind
of niche, which I don't think is that common. But my God,
it's the way that people are trained. People are now almost, especially at a games convention, what I've just seen from my point of view is like people have almost been trained to look for the miniatures, and they'll allow us go around, and then if they see miniatures, that's where they go to, and to the exclusion of everybody else.
Right.
So it's a little disheartening when you're sitting there with a brilliant game and you think, "Look at me, please." And they're like, "Oh yes, this is a Treeman statue that's this big and costs $90." It's like, never mind.
Yeah, no, I know. It's true, and it's like, and the bigger and more insane, the better. Like there's I'm blanking on the name. Yeah, there's a game that's on Kickstarter right now, and it might be Deep Madness, and they had like a previous version, and I watched the video because I'm like, I don't remember the game anyway, but they were showing like the original miniatures in the first game versus the new ones, and the new ones are like 5 times taller, and I'm like, wow, that's gorgeous. But I'm like, damn, that must make it cost so much money. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. The
thing is, again, that's where you get where the position of the bigger companies, the ones that can do those games, because they're the only ones who can afford to. So I think that there is a beautiful miniatures game out there on Kickstarter now. And of course, it's made more than $1 million, as you do.
Right.
But the thing is, the company is so big that they could have really just basically made it themselves no matter what. So it's almost like they're then treating Kickstarter as like as just a pure shop, a pre-order system, which I think loses a little bit of the heart about what Kickstarter was there for in the first place, like I said. So
yeah, I've thought that too. I've and to the very smallest degree, I've dabbled in designing games, right? It's not even worth going into, but like way back when I first heard about Kickstarter, I was like, oh man, that'd be a cool way to do it, because I don't have the money to get all this stuff going, and I mean, I can do it all because I can't even afford to get a good artist. But like, I can only imagine if it was like, well, yeah, you really have to have miniatures to make this be a big deal too. I'd be like extra, like if I could get up the money to get an artist, maybe not impossible, but you're talking about the prices you're talking about to get miniatures going. And so no matter how great my game might be, if I put it out there at, the same week that, Oathsworn came out, like I am lost in the shuffle unless my game is, I mean, maybe my game seems so very different that other people, totally different groups will look at it maybe, but like, it's tough because like you have a game like Skal, it's Vikings, right? I mean, and people might glance at it and be like, Vikings, where's the Viking miniatures right away? And
Exactly.
that's crazy because
Yeah.
you
And
don't.
some people have said to me, "Well, why don't you have the figures for like the gods and goddesses actually there on the board?" And the answer is that would be lovely. I would need probably about £9,500 to spend on these before I even got to Kickstarter, because I'd have to have them designed and made and prototyped. That would all be my own money that I would have to spend, which again, if I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars, then why am I going to Kickstarter? Because if I had tens of thousands of dollars, I'd make the game myself. But so it becomes a big companies only market. But
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying that I'd love to make, like, some of my other games would love to be fantastic with miniatures, but when the initial investment is so high, it kind of prices people out of coming up with great ideas.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, when I got to play Merchants of Infinity, and you mentioned it in your arguments, those, I don't know why, but those big, chunky plastic meeples,
Oh, they're the best.
I love this. I don't know why they're so great. I really don't. I mean, like, it's meeple shaped, right? It's meeple shaped, but they're bigger than most, and they're like a thick, chunky plastic. And for some reason, I just want to always hold those in my hand and just, like, I don't know why. Somehow they're like the perfect weight, shape, feel. I don't know. I can't explain it for the life of me, but
they were the piece that people most loved about the game, ironically. So yeah, they all loved the meeples.
Yeah, and as much as I love miniatures, I've been into miniatures for a very long time. Something about, like, I wouldn't want that game to have miniatures instead of those. I wouldn't. I mean, I've played the game now, so I would buy it if that's like the choice that it came with. But I don't.
It would lose something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I want those big, crazy plastic meeples. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to change people's line of thinking on this issue other than, if there's a big stream of, I keep walking my microphone. If there's a big stream of miniatures games that are just bad, maybe people will turn against it. I don't know. But I guess, you know, I would encourage anyone out there who looks at board games or Kickstarters, unless you're really in it for miniatures specifically, like, my God, check out some of these other things because you will miss out on such amazing stuff if you're too focused on miniatures. I probably, as much as I do have a lot of minis games, I have plenty more that don't, that I like just as much, if not better. So man, and don't miss out on Andrew's games because I'm telling you, they're fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Well, unless you have anything else to say on that particular topic, I guess we could probably
covered it well.
I think we did. All right. So I think we wrap that up. Andrew, where can they find you? How can they find out more about your game? Tell us all the info.
Okay, well, the homepage is just skalgame.com. So SKALGAME.com. That gives you an overview of the game. We'll be going live on Kickstarter on Tuesday, lunchtime for me, so sort of early morning for you. And it'll be billed as Skal, the Viking Rune Dice game. There'll be a link in the description below, I imagine, from yourself. Hopefully we'll get the link to the Kickstarter page there. It's the Kickstarter preview page is active now, so you can go and watch it. So as soon as it goes live, you'll be notified. And then please tell everyone about it. It's unique dice. It's a brilliant game. Hours of fun for the price of a round of drinks. That's the best thing I can say about it.
All right. Well, I'm for sure very excited. I will be there on day one without a shadow of a doubt. And I am now currently debating whether or not I need 2 copies of this. And it never would have crossed my mind, but now it is. So there you are. So anyway, thank you so much, Andrew, for taking the time and being on here and telling me a little bit more about the game. I was already pretty sold on it, but now you have me maybe buying 2. I don't know. So I'm very excited. So anyway, I hope you all have enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe. Click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time we put out a video. Otherwise, look forward to see you all around the table again at All Games New and Old. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
If you like any of our videos, what you should do is click this little button to subscribe so you'll know about the next time we put out a video.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.